So actually, the fourth thing that I wish I knew is that I wish I had known to keep my focus on instruction. Y'all, this is really a difficult task. You would think that if your title is instructional coach, that you can actually keep your focus on instruction. But I found my first year as a coach, especially my first year, I was being utilized for anything and everything. And I know many of you new coaches who've been in the role for a year or two have felt this way. You feel like you're supposed to be doing coaching and you find yourself doing everything except coaching. And so one of the things that I needed to do and that creating clarity around my role was also think about defining my role and making sure that I focus on instruction. My first year, I was pulled in so many different directions. I was pulled towards curriculum and teaching teachers how to do curriculum mapping. I was pulled towards technology and technology integration strategies. And I was pulled towards student support and how I might step in the classroom and run a small group or do this or do that to support our lower performing students. So I also found myself in the middle of testing and being asked to do some things related to testing. And I know that many of you have experienced this, or you will experience it if you are a brand new coach. Part of the clarity that I needed to continue to provide when I was working with my admin and my teachers was to help them see how I focus on things that are instruction specific. So I created this graphic to help define my role around instruction. And I actually call it my instructional umbrella because I really want to create a sense of me holding instruction up over my head and protecting me from the rain. And if I am focused on instruction, then I'm staying under my umbrella and I'm impacting the area where I have control. This is my title, instructional coach. Instruction is the place where I can impact. So as long as I'm holding up my umbrella and I try not to get rained on by curriculum or technology or student support, that helps me stay within my boundary of instruction. Now, I know that all of the things are interconnected, but I still like to focus on instruction so that I don't lose sight of it. So let me show you this graphic. So at the center, I put improve student learning because that's one of the biggest goals. And then around the sides, I have instructional specialist, instructional designer, co-teacher, instructional improvement, learning facilitator, and instructional data coach. And the great news is I put a copy of this in the workbook for you. So just download that and you can take a closer look at it. You can also get access to the link that I have that is a Canva template. So you can adjust it and make it your own. Okay, but I tried to be really intentional about each of these areas all having instruction in there so that I could really try to stay focused. One of the things that I just wish I had known from the beginning is that I needed to stay focused and I needed to maybe ask more questions when someone was asking me whether or not I should, or when someone was asking me to take on a project or work on this or work on that, and it wasn't inside my area of instruction, I wish I had known to ask a few more questions. Michael Bungay-Stanier has this great question in his book, The Coaching Habit, and it's, if I'm saying yes to this, what am I saying no to? And that question alone can help you figure out your boundaries around what it is that you need to be focused on and working on. And I know in some cases you are part reading specialist, or in some cases, maybe you are the testing coordinator for your school. So sometimes you can't get out of these things that are peripheral, that are not instruction related. And so, but the more aware you are of instruction and it being your focus, the better you're going to be at keeping that boundary. So I really want you to think about that as a new coach. It's something that I just wish someone had told me, or I wish I knew better, this idea of focusing on instruction and asking more questions if I'm being asked to do things that are not quite in my lane, right? And then another way that I really tried to focus on instruction as I started to get more efficient as a coach and develop more was realizing that I needed to be very intentional about building a schedule that reflected these goals that I had about focusing on instruction. So let me show you my schedule. Again, I know this is kind of small. You can see it better in the workbook, but I actually used a technique by a leadership coach named Michael Hyatt. And what he talks about is creating this idea of an ideal week. Basically, blocking in the parts of your week that are going to stay in place so you know where they're happening. And also, he talks a lot about time blocking things together that relate together. So if you look at this more closely, and again, I know it's kind of small, but you can see it in your workbook. Over on the right, that's Fridays for me, my schedule and how that looks. And it says meet with admin. I try to put specific days, or I try to put a specific day, and I like Fridays. I think that's a good day for admin meetings for me, where I am going to block off that time in my schedule. I know it's happening every week, and it's a part of my weekly schedule. Now, sometimes does it get canceled or changed? Like, of course, but creating a ideal week or a typical week schedule has really helped me to do a couple of key things. One, make sure that I have time and space for all the things that I do need to do. And it makes sure helps me make sure that I have time and space for those meetings that I need to have with admin. But also, one of the things that I added to my schedule after realizing that I couldn't do meetings back to back to back is in between meeting time where I could have some planning, post-meeting planning, because that was something that I felt overwhelmed by. I was doing meeting after meeting after meeting, and I was never having time to process that. Or if I was in a meeting with a teacher and I told her I would get her a resource, I never had time to go back to my desk and get her that resource until 2 days later, and she needed it. So one of the things that I wish I'd known is that I needed to focus on instruction. And it wasn't just the fact that I needed to set some boundaries around instruction. It's also that I needed to schedule my schedule around instruction and making sure that anything that I put on my calendar or on my schedule was truly going to be supporting that main goal of supporting teachers and instruction. And knowing that one-on-one coaching with a teacher is the most impactful thing that I can do. So a PD isn't a great opportunity, and a PLC or a team meeting is a great opportunity. But if I could funnel things into one-on-one coaching, I knew I would get further. So I wanted to make sure that I set space on my calendar where I could have one-on-one coaching meetings. And that's where I could impact instruction the best. So I also, when I did start working with teachers and got into a rhythm with some of them, I created weekly meetings with them, and I put them on my calendar as a weekly meeting so that I could meet with them and do a coaching cycle. So this is one of the things that I just don't think I had enough of an understanding about. When you come out of the classroom and into coaching, it's a very strange feeling because someone has scheduled you and given you your schedule minute by minute, basically your entire career. And so when you come into coaching, you find yourself staring at a blank computer screen of a calendar going like, what am I supposed to do with my time? And using Michael Hyatt's method of the typical week schedule is an extremely helpful tool for you to at least start with. Just start by creating a typical week. Start by setting your priorities around instruction. So you can just start with this. Just start by setting your priorities around instruction, or what are the tasks that you want to be doing that you know will impact instruction, and then create a typical week schedule that is going to allow you to do that, to focus on instruction. So as a new coach, it's hard to see these things right away, but it took me a little while. One of the things that I really learned is that where I spend my time is where I make my impact. And so I want to be sure that I'm spending time impacting instruction. So that was definitely one of my biggest takeaways from my first few years of coaching, is realizing the importance of schedule and focus. And I really wanted to stay focused on instruction. So go ahead and grab your workbook, because in there, like I said, is the copy of the coaching role graphic, then a copy of this typical week schedule so you can take a closer look, and some links to those Michael Hyatt resources that I mentioned that will help you think about how you're going to prioritize your time. Because this is something that no one is going to tell you as a new coach. No one is going to tell you how to block out your calendar and what you need to be focused on here or there. They're just going to expect you to do it. So being mindful about it and then realizing that you want to stay focusing on instruction with your time and your priorities will absolutely get you ahead of the game.